Last Tuesday, Etsy made the announcement that they'd be making a few changes in order to help sellers this holiday season. Which, of course, conveniently happened just 1 month after I personally rallied thousands of sellers in a request for change during our Keep Etsy Human movement. Thanks to everyone who participated in that, by the way. And whether or not these updates are a direct result of our movement, these changes are exactly what we, as the sellers, have been asking for. So today, I'm covering the full list of updates, as well as everything that you should know about Etsy's most recent changes. For anyone who may be new here, my name is Starla Moore, founder of the Handmade Alpha Academy for Etsy sellers and manager at erank.com, Etsy's most popular SEO tool. And over the last few years, Etsy has made quite a few changes and updates that have had tremendous negative effects on both Etsy sellers and buyers. For a quick recap on the problems that we tackled in our recent Keep Etsy Human movement, feel free to watch this video up here. Point being is that we used our voices, and it seems like Etsy listened. Because 1 week ago, Etsy released this article titled, "How Etsy's Supporting Your Success This Holiday Season." The link to the full article will be down below. But here are the cliff notes. Previously, Etsy's purchase protection program covered up to $250 on qualifying orders if a product was lost, damaged, or stolen while in transit. Basically, as long as you qualify and have a good standing with Etsy, they would pay out of their pocket if something happened to one of your items once it shipped. And for the holidays, Etsy's just announced that they'll be doubling this protection to up to $500, stating that over 99% of orders will be covered if they meet the eligibility criteria. It's important to note that Etsy specifically says during the holiday season, which may mean that they'll switch back to the $250 in coverage in January, but only time will tell. Etsy also stated that they'll be offering 24/7 support to sellers, though this one does have me a bit conflicted for a few reasons. I'll get into that in a moment. In the update, Etsy states that you can get support around the clock in our help center, including live support for most topics. They also state that over 80% of all chats are answered within 1 minute, and nearly 90% of requests are resolved in less than 24 hours, and we're working hard to even further improve resolution times. At the bottom of the article, they've reiterated that these improvements are based on January through July 2023 Etsy data. Now, my biggest concern here is that in Etsy's Q1 investors report, CEO Josh Silverman clearly stated that Etsy had started utilizing AI and machine learning in order to better regulate the marketplace. And based on communications that I've personally had with Etsy support, as well as thousands of sellers who have reached out to me with similar stories, it very much seems like Etsy support has been mostly not human since the start of the year, with a majority of responses not acknowledging the seller's stated problems at all and generally leading to no resolution. In my case, a hoodie in one of my shops was wrongfully deactivated under Etsy's Amber jewelry policy simply because I'd stated in the listing that my friend Amber Marie and I designed the item together. And upon explaining this to Etsy, they told me that their decision stands because Amber jewelry cannot be sold on Etsy and that they would not communicate with me further, which was infuriating. But over the last few weeks, I've had more and more of my students reporting relatively pleasant interactions with helpful and human Etsy support staff through the live chat feature, a feature that many sellers, including myself, do not have, leaving us stuck with email communication, which tends to be a significantly slower process than Etsy's claimed 24 hours. As of right now, I'm currently in communication with several sellers who have quickly had wrongfully deactivated listings restored, only to be flagged again and removed. They message Etsy, they get them restored, and then they get removed again, over and over and over. This tells me that Etsy's bot deactivation system is still running rampant, and though they have a support staff on hand to perform manual reviews, this process of constant activation and deactivation can obviously be a tiring process for sellers. So hopefully in the future, Etsy puts a set of restrictions in place that clears previously reactivated listings from becoming subject to further deactivations. While this this is all a step in the right direction, I still feel that Etsy has several major improvements needed in their seller communication systems. Tacking on to the last policy, Etsy also mentioned that we've created a designated process for sellers experiencing issues with account suspensions so they can quickly file an appeal and have a specialized agent review their case. I'm yet to hear any sellers talk about this new process and their personal experiences with getting their accounts restored, but I'll leave a link down below that outlines the new appeal process. If you end up using it, please let me know your experience with this new system down below in my comment section. Lastly, Etsy announced that they'll be working harder than ever to ensure listings that do not follow their policies are removed from the platform. In fact, just days after our Keep Etsy Human movement, Etsy added this banner to the top of the listing editor page that stated, "Etsy is a place for unique and creative goods. Make sure your items can be sold on our marketplace, and don't use stock photos or other photos you found on the internet." Now, I do want to clarify though, because when I first shared this news a few weeks ago, I had at least 100 POD sellers contact me in a panic about their mockups. Etsy policies state that you can use mockups. What you cannot do is buy a bunch of cheap items on sites like Alibaba, save those images, and upload them as your own while claiming that you made the items. So, POD people, no panic. Back to the point though, what kind of rubs me the wrong way about this particular section is how they've touted that this year we've increased the number of listings we've removed for violating our Handmade policy by 112%, which is a weird thing to brag about when one of Etsy's biggest issues right now is wrongful deactivation of products that do follow their marketplace guidelines. So I'd be curious to know what percentage of these deactivations were later retracted by Etsy or were a direct result of this back and forth Etsy listing deactivation tango. The bottom line is Etsy is trying, and as sellers, we need to continue encouraging them to move in the right direction, while also thanking them for the positive changes that they've made. But we also need to keep asking for these changes to be refined by bringing up the weak points that are still causing tremendous issues with sellers' abilities to run businesses on the platform. As a buyer, I'm finding it harder than ever to find what I'm looking for while shopping. Mark and I are actually planning to update my engagement ring for our upcoming 13th wedding anniversary. And of course, as an Etsy coach, I really wanted my ring to come from Etsy. But with a few reverse image searches, nearly every ring that we've chosen has turned out to be a drop-shipped product from Alibaba, with some of these sellers having thousands of sales and even star seller badges. And if we're having this much trouble as two people who have literally dedicated the last 11 years of our lives to analyzing Etsy sellers, I can't imagine how hard it is for the average buyer to navigate the platform. Again, Etsy is a great platform, and they're moving in the right direction, but they still have a long way to go. So in the meantime, it's crucial to make sure that things like your Etsy SEO and external marketing are both in check in order to ensure that you're not losing traffic to some of these shady knockoff competitors. If you need help with either of those things, be sure to click up here to grab my free Etsy SEO toolbox, or click right here to grab my free Instagram marketing toolkit. Overall, success on Etsy sometimes means staying updated on the platform's more recent policies in order to make educated assessments of how those changes affect you. And with a little science, a lot of data, and some help from a trusted Etsy expert, you'll be well on your way to Etsy success. Cue the funky lo-fi beat.